Neil Armstrong wasn't always an astronaut. In fact, before he was the first man to walk on the moon, he was a young boy living in Ohio. Neil was always adventurous. He had lots of fun exploring and enjoying the outdoors. He joined the Boy Scouts of America and was honored to obtain the rank of Eagle Scout. Many Eagle Scouts have become leaders in America, and it was no surprise when Neil Armstrong joined those ranks. He was destined to become a leader. Neil Armstrong climbed to the nearby hill and path through the parks and even the nearby wilderness. Young Neil's old-time scout troop walking sticks had a compass on the top, 50 feet of corded rope wrapped around it, and every fishing lure known to man hooked on the sides for a complete survival kit. Neil never forgot the Boy Scout motto, "Be prepared." As well-trained as he was by his leaders in the Scouts, he would soon meet a challenge that would put all his skills, strengths, and his spirit and speed to the test. Long before he became an Eagle Scout, Neil Armstrong went on a hike with his friends to the woods behind his home. A shifting fog lifted Neil up from his friends. They couldn't believe their eyes. In an instant, he was gone from their view. The next moment, Neil stood along the trail leading to the forest's edge. "What's going on here?" Neil asked. "I must be in a dream, but this is also real." "But it is real, Mr. Armstrong, very real." It was an ancient Indian chief with a huge walking stick. A stick like no other Neil Armstrong ever saw. "This is the destiny staff. You alone must meet your destiny, young Armstrong," claims the chief. "Who are you? How did I get here? And what's going on?" asked Neil. The chief replied, "Follow the trail to meet your destiny." Neil followed the chief on the trail, and he could see that the destiny staff had carved out pictures that kept constantly moving and changing. It was the most incredible thing he'd ever saw. "Young Neil, are you up to the challenge? Are you ready to meet your destiny?" asked the chief. "Yes, sir," Neil replied. "Then catch!" the Indian exclaimed. Then he tossed the staff to Neil. Neil's quick reflexes sprang into action, catching the staff quickly and easily. Then he looked back to find the Indian chief, but the chief had vanished, gone. Neil had no opportunity to ask any questions about this destiny the chief mentioned. "I'd better just go ahead with the hike up this path. The sooner I finish here, the sooner this dream or whatever's going on will end," said Neil. Neil traveled up the tallest hill. As the scenery changed, on the destiny staff, the pictures on the staff were small previews of what was lying ahead of him. It even warned him of a snake on the trail. The snake tried to strike Neil, but the staff had warned Neil in time to move swiftly aside. Neil escaped the fanged serpent, and it bit into his hiking stick. Neil then tossed the snake way over his head and over the other side of the hill. Finally, Neil reached the top of the hill, and there was a cliff up there, and you could see all the way to town by the light of the moon and the stars. Neil heard a loud sound. In the sky, he saw a giant eagle. It must have been at least 50 feet tall, easily the biggest eagle Neil ever saw. It was soaring majestically high above the clouds. "Wow, look at the size of that bird," exclaimed Neil. Suddenly, the staff pulsated, and it pointed itself back towards the town. A huge fire was heading into the town straight for his friends and family. Neil had to warn them before it was too late. But how? Neil could feel the staff carving shift again in his hand. He could see what he had to do. Neil held the staff high over his head with both hands. Then he jumped off the side of the cliff, and the giant eagle caught the stick, carried Neil into town. And Neil could feel as he reached out and he touched the moon. Someday, maybe I'll go there, said Neil. The eagle took Neil straight into town in seconds, and then he disappeared. Neil went straight to the sheriff's home, and he knocked on the door. A light can go on, and a sleepy sheriff answered that door. Neil, what is it? What's wrong? Fire coming this way from the southern forest, Neil exclaimed. Fire? The sheriff, who was now very awake, he repeated. He said he knew that Neil would never joke about this, and he ran to the phone, and he called the fire department. He repeated the information Neil had given to him, then started to leave to help put out the fire. Neil wanted to go help also, but the sheriff said, You're a civilian. You've helped enough already, Neil. This wasn't good enough for Neil, though. He knew he could help, so he went anyway. He saw the townspeople with little buckets trying to douse the fire. What they needed was able to pick up the big troughs that they were getting the water out of to drench the fire. Neil looked at his stick to see what to do. He held the destiny staff high in the air to call the giant eagle. The eagle came and swooped up the big troughs and he drenched that fire. There was so much water poured out of the troughs that it looked like a thunderstorm. The townspeople cheered and waved to the giant eagle as he flew away. They saw Neil had gotten the giant eagle to help him put out the fire and thank him as well. The next day, the whole town held a victory party in Neil's honor. I just did what any Boy Scout would do, Neil said with a wink. Just then, the giant mighty eagle came into view. He was soaring through the sky. Neil waved and gave a wink to him, thanks to his friends, then watched as he flew out of sight. Good friends are hard to find, but well worth looking for.